I wanted to talk about today how suffering happens, and most importantly, the main reason why you suffer. And my hope is that as soon as you recognize that you're suffering, and as soon as you recognize why you are suffering, then you also will know what to do about it. And knowing and having experienced how suffering can be devastating in transitioning, I really want to give you the most simplest tool possible that you recognize and you can shift internally. Obviously, suffering could be caused by many different things, and we may even detect patterns of suffering or habitual ways of suffering. And throughout my transitioning of 5 years and having studied why I suffer, having studied so many of my clients as to how they suffer, I have come to realize two main reasons why we tend to suffer. And I would like to give you the most simple way as to recognizing it and shifting it as you see this happening. Now, suffering may look in different ways, but it all comes down to you having a recurring thought about something and feeling certain emotions about that thing. This is what the suffering really is. It's obviously very subjective, but if we were to point out as to why you're suffering, you might tell me, here are the reasons. So these would be the thoughts, and then the emotions attached to those thoughts. This is how you suffer, right? And this tends to be usually very recurring, meaning that we tend to suffer about the same thing over and over again. And that suffering might be about the loss of identity, and that suffering might be about leaving the organization or the sector or not having found anything, keep searching for a job. Whatever the suffering is, it all comes down to a certain set of thoughts about how this is not going the way we want to, or how it should have gone differently, and then emotions attached to them. Now, here are the main two reasons I have uncovered as to why we suffer. And then I want to also make a distinction between suffering and then experiencing negative emotions. And I want to also get clear as to why that's important to recognize. So, the main reason why we suffer are one, we have forgotten a fundamental truth about ourselves, about who we are. And the second reason why we suffer is because we have made fear an authority in our lives. So, one of two things. And as I said, my goal is to make it as simple. Simple doesn't mean it's not challenging. Simple means simple to understand, simple to grasp, but it takes practice to put it into practice, right? So let's look at the first one, which is forgetting who we are or recognizing the truth about who we are leads to a lot of suffering. And what I mean by it is when we don't recognize how powerful we really are to be solving whatever the issues we need to be solving to keep moving, when we don't recognize it, when we don't recognize that truth about ourselves, when we don't recognize the truth about how we might have forgotten our values, when we don't recognize the truth about how capable we actually are, then we suffer. Because we have made ourselves in some way not capable. We made ourselves in some way not really able to do XYZ. And then we're trying to attach ourselves to something that no longer belongs to us. That's where we have suffering, right? So think of it this way is if you really knew how powerful you are as a human, as a humanitarian, as an expert, as a professional, to be solving whatever the problems ahead of you, to keep moving. If you knew this truth all the time, would you need to be suffering? And when I coach a lot of humanitarians on this topic, they all tell me, of course, if I really knew that about myself, why would I, right? Exactly. The same goes with like in the dating scene, right? Imagine you dated someone and imagine you like that person, or imagine that you thought this person would be a great person for spending the rest of your life together, and then imagine that person didn't want that relationship. And that causes, or that can cause, a lot of suffering if we keep attaching ourselves to that person, believing that we cannot find another similar person, believing that this was the person, believing that we're not capable or we're not someone who can have such relationships, or we are, something is flawed with us, or something is wrong with us, whatever it is. If we tell those stories, then we're bound to be suffering. So that's why the first thing to recognize is suffering is coming from you forgetting how powerful you really are. That's the first one. The second one, you have given too much power to fear. Right? That's, I think, something that we see it all the time. I see it in my own life all the time. And that causes suffering a lot because we have made the fear our authority of our lives. And the fear is dictating all the things about how this is not going to work, how that's going to fail, how this is, how that is. And therefore, we're suffering from all of those ways instead of whatever the fear is saying. If this is the decision that we're going to take, then let's go and take the decision and feel fearful and keep going. Because fear will make us believe that if we're not afraid, we're not doing something right. Or if we don't listen to fear, then we might miss something, or we might not have thought something through. Or if we don't keep fearing, then we may make a mistake, and then we will, I don't know, commit the worst mistake of our lives, or whatever it is, right? So fear will always make us feel that we need to be vigilant and somehow watching and suffering and dying for it and this kind of thing. But that's the illusion that fear keeps making us believe. And I think the fundamental truth we need to understand is, if this is really important to us, this is the path we want to go for, this is the outcome we want to go for, then fear is an illusion in that sense. Fear is an illusion that keeps us safe and keeps us in the well, have you looked at this, or have you paid attention to this, or have you thought this through, or have you, I don't know, measured it millions of times? Fear will keep making us think and worry and confused and not move forward. That's what fear does, because fear is trying to protect us. But that also tends to cause a lot of suffering, especially when we're transitioning, especially when we don't have anything certain about anything. Fear makes us even feel more extra vigilant, right? And while it's understandable why fear does that, it is also causing us a lot of suffering that is making it difficult for us to keep going. So that's why I really want everyone to who's listening to this and who is suffering currently, who is feeling so much suffering that they can't even be present in what is currently. I just want you to recognize for yourself, if at least I could do one of two things. If I could recognize that whatever the challenges ahead of me, whatever the situation happening around me, whatever the situation in my life, instead of keep suffering, can I recognize how I'm capable of solving the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, and then start going and solving? That's one way, right? If I really recognize how powerful my mind is, how powerful my skills are, how powerful I am as a human, how resilient I am as a human, what are the problems I start solving? So that instead of staying in your head and instead of suffering and feeling so bad about whatever is happening, if you recognize that you are that powerful human who can solve a lot of different things and keep going, then you will gain that power, or you will feel that power instead of feeling so bad about it. So that's one way to get yourself out of that suffering, right? To remember how powerful you are as a human. The second is, okay, what are the fears that I'm giving so much power to, so much authority, so much agency, or whatever the word that works best for you, that you are not even seeing how you could be mitigating those risks and solving those risks and all of those things and keep going. Because here is what I'm getting at is, what if suffering is an optional thing? And here is what I said about the suffering and experiencing negative emotions. I believe suffering is different than experiencing negative emotions. And here is how you can distinguish it. Suffering, as I said, is something recurring that keeps happening, right? There's something recurring that your brain is so used to thinking about it, worrying about it, overthinking about it, and all of those things. Usually, those are very recurring things, meaning they keep happening over and over again, maybe several times a day, or even several times in 10 minutes. Who knows, right? So, suffering is something that is so like so repeated that you know what that is about. While experiencing negative emotions is something that we will always be doing. Like, no matter what level of success you achieve, no matter what level of abundance you achieve, you will be experiencing negative emotions. So that's why I am deciding, at least for myself, that okay, I want to distinguish between the two. Which are the things or situations that cause me suffering, meaning what are the things that I keep recurrently thinking about, and start distinguishing those suffering. And that suffering is coming from me forgetting how powerful I am actually to solve it, and how my fears are hijacking my attention instead of me keep solving things along the way. And then the negative emotions that I will experience on the day-to-day basis, that is part of life. That is something that we cannot escape, avoid, no matter, excuse me, how great we are at managing our emotions and all of this, because they will keep coming and going, just like weather, right? Weather changes every day. That's normal. Some of the seasons, it will stay more on the bright side, meaning on the sunny side, excuse me. And some of the seasons, it's going to be on the rainy side, but still the weather keeps changing. The same goes with the negative emotions that keep changing, and then the positive emotions, even though they're emotions meaning vibrations in our body, but we tend to label them as negative or positive, right? So distinguishing between the experiencing negative emotions and suffering might be useful for yourself to start seeing, okay, suffering is coming from these type of thought patterns that I see where the emotions are attached to it. it. And negative emotions that I label as negative are coming from me reacting or interacting with my life, with the situations. And that keeps happening probably forever until we die. So as you start recognizing this, that okay, what is the reason or what are the main thought patterns because of which I'm suffering, you start seeing that those thought patterns might be coming from you not recognizing how powerful you are to be solving whatever it is ahead of you. And once you start recognizing, you start also recognizing that all of your fears might have clouded your judgments, clouded your abilities, and clouded to see your truths about how you can keep solving them and keep moving forward. And once you have these two really nailed it down and start seeing for yourself, I see that I'm suffering again because of this or because of this, and I know what to do about it, then you start looking at, okay, let me come back to my truth, which is I am capable of solving this XYZ thing. So, how am I going to do that? With trust, with groundedness, with whatever the feeling that you want to have. And then, even if you see fear happening in all different forms and shapes and possibilities, you still keep going in towards, okay, this is how I'm going to solve this problem, this is how I'm going to solve this problem, and keep going. Because no matter which direction we're going, we will need to be solving problems. And the question is which ones we feel we are more able to do that now, and maybe some of them were able to do that later. And that's what I mean when I said, what if suffering is optional, where we no longer stay stuck or feel lost in that circle of a lot of emotions jumbled up together and we feel like we can't get out of it, versus, okay, that jumbled up circle is happening because I didn't stay in my truth. And because I didn't stay in my truth, I got involved in how I can solve this, how it is this, how it's that, and then keep changing our mind and all of these things. But if we stay in our truth and we learn how to stay in our truth and trust that truth, then see what we are really capable of and how to go about it. Okay, my dears, if you have any questions or would you like coaching on this, please come coach with me. I really send you my big love for going through this experience that's very challenging, but also it seems like there is no other option but to go through. So we may as well learn how to deal with our suffering in the process.